Hello, OIS Podcast audience. Welcome to the next episode of the Rob and Jay Show. We have had the opportunity to speak to some amazing people today, and that's going to continue with our next interview. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But for those of you who don't know me, my name is Rob Rothman. I am a practicing glaucoma specialist in New York. I spend about 50% of my time taking care of complicated glaucoma and cataract patients. The remainder of my time is spent running InFocus Capital Partners, which is an ophthalmology specific venture fund, which has fully deployed its capital in Fund 1. We recently had our first exit a few weeks ago, and we are looking forward to, in earnest, beginning capital raise for Fund 2 in the near future. Aside from doing those two things, I am spending a significant portion of today at least doing podcasts with Jay. So Jay?
You and I go back. We should talk about this. We should go back. We go back. I mean, we're almost 30 years old. We go back. We were 17, 18 years old.
Correct.
First years in Boston in a combined med program. And we've stayed friends for a lot of years. We look like Siamese twins, but we're not.
Right.
But we are very close. And we train at the same place too. Rob for glaucoma, myself for cornea. I'm actually an anterior segment surgeon. I practice in northern New Jersey. I also teach here at the New York Eye Near here in Manhattan. I spend most of my time, obviously, in eye care. I also have a different side to me. I'm an entrepreneur. I've been lucky enough to be part of some wonderful companies in their C-suite and really being part of innovation, I guess, for many, many years. We just love our space. And I can't wait till we speak to Perry about what he's up to. He's had an amazing career the last couple of decades, but just the last several months, some hot news coming about something that we really don't talk too much about in the podcast, and that's about kids.
So with that, Perry Sternberg, the CEO of Sydnexis, welcome to the OIS Podcast. Thank you so much for being here. You know, you're a, I don't know, pseudo-legendary guy. Maybe should we?
No, I think it's legendary.
Maybe fully legendary. I don't know. It depends who you ask.
A little bit.
Little bit. I mean, well, whatever. We don't want to give you too much of an ego yet. We'll let you wait till later. And, you know, you have a long and really storied history in ophthalmology, having come through Novartis and B&L and Shire. The commercial launched some products which people are very familiar with, one of which is, you know, regularly advertised on TV. So, you know, that's your responsibility as well. But, you know, today we're focusing on your new venture, but it's great to have you on. And I think that, you know, in the spirit of knowing, you know, the illustriousness of your career, I think it's a good idea and something that we like to do where we kind of dive a little bit into your story before we get into the company, because, you know, people want to know how you end up being Perry Sternberg, right? How do you get to the position that you're in? What was it that you did early on in your career? Was there any educational influences, anything that kind of helped get you where you are? And we can just sort of follow that journey a little bit so that people understand what it takes to get here.
Well, awesome. No, you're
Wait.
What?
Before that,
What?
we're all sports folks, okay? This is a great sports league. I mean, the Yankees hit 20 home runs over the weekend, but also into college basketball. And you and I have favorites, but wow, who is your horse?
Yeah, and
in the Final Four.
And no lying, Perry. No lying.
Just come out. Come out and say.
Well, I was actually going to say Houston just to get Jay upset. But Rob, now I know you have family that's at Duke, so I got to go Duke all the way. So Duke all the way.
Podcast and go.
I will say you passed and you can continue to speak. We will not mute you. As I will consider this kind of a little bit of a soft answer because of some knowledge you may have come across. But
I was like, you know, but I got a question before I get on my history. Hey, where did you get that three-piece suit from? Where did you get that suit from?
Three-piece J is looking very
Three-piece J, man. I like that. Can I borrow that? Can you send it my way?
It doesn't matter where I am, Perry. I always look.
There's 5 more pounds.
I always stay underdressed next to Jay. I always look underdressed next.
Oh, Jay told me casual. He comes in a vest, dude.
It's a casual conversation.
I mean, come on.
Well, he's not wearing a tie. He is casual.
Well, no, you know, Rob, Jay, you know, thank you again for the opportunity. It's really, truly a pleasure to be on the show with you folks. And you know, thanks for thinking of me and thinking of Sydnexis. But a little bit about myself to get started. So I actually call myself a commercial CEO. So I started actually 30 plus years ago carrying the bag. And it was by far the best experience I ever had because it allowed me to interact with physicians like yourself. So I started my career carrying the bag at Merck, spent 11 years at Merck, probably spent 5 years in the sales side, interacting with physicians. And what I learned very quickly in my career, if you want to be successful, listen to your customers, listen what they tell you. And I took that throughout my journey as I, went from Merck. And then I went over to Novartis, and and then I spent 5 years at Novartis, and that was actually my first time in eye care. I joined Novartis Ophthalmics, and actually in the back of the eye, worked on a product called like Visidyne for AMD before the VEGFs actually came to the market. Spent 5 years in the back of the eye over at Novartis, and then joined Bausch & Lomb, ran the U.S. business over at Bausch & Lomb, front of the eye products. And that's actually where I became really close with Jay. And Jay was a mentor of mine early on in my career, kind of telling me exactly what the physicians needed as we were looking to build Bausch & Lomb up. And then after the transaction with Bausch & Lomb, I joined Shire. And the one thing when I came over to Shire was not an eye care company at all. CEO of Shire at that time and myself, we both had eye care experience, and we said, hey, listen, we got to get into eye care, right? This is where you want to be. We were in eye care at Bausch & Lomb and Novartis and Shire, we were playing in CNS products. We want to get into eye care. And so we went out and we acquired the Lithograph at that time, now Xiidra, built out the global organization for Xiidra at Shire. And fast forward, Shire moved on and then, had a chance to become a CEO for a CNS company and did that for 5 years. But during that time, I was always missing the eye space. I stayed involved in eye boards. I always missed the eye space and had a chance to come back over to Sydnexis. But to answer your question, Rob, I mean, my journey really and my success in journey has really been on two things. One, listening to your physicians or your customers, right, as you go through. And secondly, surrounding yourself with great people. I've only been successful because I've had great teams around me that actually helped me be successful throughout my career. So it's honestly a privilege to be back in eye care. I'm so happy. I've only been back since August, but being on a show like this with Rob and Jay, you don't get this in CNS. I tell you that for sure.
Definitely not.
Yeah,
No,
definitely not.
And then, it's funny, and we've said this, I think, pretty much every time we've done an interview, that it's a continuous and recurring theme that, ophthalmology is pretty unique space, right? It's really an unbelievable space, and this is way more common than I think in any other industry, where somebody who's in ophthalmology takes a brief tour of duty outside of ophthalmology and ultimately wants to come right back in.
And I got to tell you, I've been in CNS, rare diseases, you name the therapeutic area. Robbie, you're absolutely right. No.
Yeah, it's just a fantastic environment. And I think that unfortunately, sometimes the investor view of ophthalmology is clouded by, the opinion that ophthalmology is too small and ophthalmology isn't, broad enough, and there aren't enough, big exits in ophthalmology. And people fail to realize that there are loads of exits at big multiples with good return, because there is so much need, so much unmet need.
That's right.
And so many things that we need to do better, and so many diseases that we haven't tackled. And, Sydnexis is a perfect example of that, right? I mean, here we are speaking to a company that is about to really tackle a condition that's globally important that has yet to be addressed in any meaningful way. So, I think with that as the backdrop, give us a little insight. Let's talk a little bit about Sydnexis, and let's talk about, myopia and why it's a problem. And let's get into it, because it's exciting for us to know that this is going to be the first, true global effort at treating, myopia. Most people think myopia just means glasses, right? They don't realize the health impacts of significant myopia and what it does to the eye and the pathology involved. And it's good to try and bring that out.
That's
so
right.
that the investor and ophthalmology community who listens to these podcasts can get a better idea.
I mean, typically in eye care, we don't talk about kids. We just don't.
Mhm.
And We've heard a lot of great things in the news the last several months. Obviously, your announcement as CEO was a big, huge win for the company as they started getting into this phase that they're in right now. But yeah, this journey is great, and every company out there, it could be Apple, it could be Time Magazine, it could be all the different strategics out there in healthcare in general. They're talking about myopia, and COVID obviously exacerbated that. Kids were on their phones all the time. They were indoors all the time. Definitely in Asia, it's a massive, massive pandemic. So what a great spot to be in. But yeah, tell us your story about myopia, the Sydnexis story, and how it intertwines with what you've done in eye care.
Yeah, no, happy to do so. And again, I got a lot of this advice, from you, Jay, as I was stepping out of eye care for a while. Jay was always a mentor of mine, and I sat on a few eye care boards, and I was watching products move through the development. And Rob, I fully agree with you. Innovation in eye care is amazing, and most of the innovation actually comes from the eye care physicians themselves, which is remarkable as well. So I ran global businesses, and you have these great R&D businesses, but at the end of the day, in eye care, most of the innovation comes from the physicians themselves. So all you have to do is listen. So when I was on some boards, I was providing some advice to this company called Sydnexis, right? And they were tackling this landmark study in pediatric progressive myopia. They were founded in 2014. They were a development company trying to figure out, could they get a product approved for pediatric progressive myopia? And for me, what was most important was the patient, right? The kids. Could you actually help kids slow the progression of myopia? That leads to a lot of other consequences in life. And it fascinated me. So of course I gave some of my time, right, to this company behind the scenes, watching this company move this program through development. And the company, before I joined, was moving a landmark clinical trial that you really don't see that often now. 850 patients, right? Age group of 3 to 14, broad age group, large trial through clinical development. And to your point, Jay, during the COVID time, right? Too, this was actually moving along. And so I happen to know the investors behind this company, and they said, hey, listen, if this actually pans out, would you consider coming back into eye care and moving this company from a development company into a commercialization company? And I said, let's see how the data reads out. And so sure enough, I had a chance to be under the hood a little bit, and the data read out. And I believe will provide the first and only FDA approved product on the market to actually slow the progression of myopia. And to your point, Rob, I do think that we always think about myopia as lenses or contacts or more of what I call the sign and symptom, right? The symptom of myopia here. But the truth of the matter is that you need to solve the underlying condition. And this, to me, at the end of the day, would be the first product that's really like disease modifying. You're slowing the progression down. And so we did read out our clinical data. Fast forward, I joined the company in August, helped assist the company to move that filing down to the agency. We did submit at the end of December. We got our PDUFA date of October 23rd. And so we're very excited about that in the US. And then at the same time, as Rob and Jay, myopia is not just US, it's global. And so part of our study was also to make sure that we could file in Europe. We partnered the commercialization rights with Santen, and we just recently announced we got positive CHMP opinion to allow our product to be on the market in Europe. And so we're waiting for final approval for sure. But again, we see the first and only FDA approved product in the US, and the first and only product also being available soon in Europe.
So this is not your grandma's atropine, right? We've used atropine probably times a month, in surgery or dilating eyes and so forth for people that have small pupils and so forth, right? But we know that a lot of our colleagues will use compounded agents that are atropine to help these patients. And a lot of folks have a trust issue with that, but there's no other choice. So that's what they do. So what's so different about a molecule that we know about? We studied actually in our ophthalmology training.
Yeah.
But why are you guys different? Like what's in is there something in the sauce? Like,
Yeah, but it kind of goes back to my point, Jay, to you, Rob, right? The actual way Sydnexis came across atropine, right, for myopia was the customers were actually saying atropine works for myopia, right? Let's really think about the science here, right? Myopia was already approved on the market, right? 1% concentration, right? The eye care professionals knew the benefits of myopia, atropine, in slowing the progression of myopia. What they couldn't do is put 1% in the kid's eye, right? We all know the problems that would happen. So, that would be a major issue. So what they were trying to do is lower the concentration of lower the concentration of atropine to get the benefits in slowing the progression of myopia. And so as you brought down that concentration, the problem about it is that, you get the stability issues with the product. So the pH starts dropping very quickly. And again, it's kind of like putting acid in the kid's eye. You can't do that. So that's how compounding got into it, right? Compounding said I could give the doctors a very low dose atropine, right? But it had to be compounded because you couldn't get the shelf life, the stability to keep that near neutral pH for a longer period of time. So Sydnexis, this was well before I joined, was smart enough to realize, and it was actually, Rob, to your point, the investors behind it, smart enough to realize, right, that if we could actually figure out a way to formulate atropine, right, to be stable, near neutral pH, the eye care professionals have already told you they want the product. Right. So this is one that, when it's not like you have to develop a market, you have to create a market. Here, the pediatric ophthalmologist, the general ophthalmologist, the optometrist already told you we want atropine, right? But we can't figure out how to actually get it from the 1% concentration down to the 0.01% concentration. So fast forward, Sydnexis knew that there had to be something that was keeping the stability of the product, right, at that near neutral pH. So fast forward, they created a different formulation. So if you think about atropine's water-based formulations, right? They're H2O-based formulations. Well, the degradation process is much faster in that. And so what Sydnexis did is they created a novel formulation of atropine, keeping that process moving at a slower rate, keeping a near neutral pH that allows you to put the product in the eye, right? And we will on track to get FDA approval. We believe, pending FDA approval, we'll have a shelf life for this product that will allow us to use this and commercialize this in large scale, right? Compounding atropine, again, it can only be used for a short period of time. But the concept of atropine is exactly what you said, Rob, right? The doctors actually told you about it.
Right. And it's amazing. I mean, it's been used, and pediatric ophthalmologists have used it, and clearly it's a stability issue. And I think that the problem that Sydnexis has solved is relevant here in the United States, but it's incredibly more relevant for outside the United States, where compounding doesn't really exist,
Right.
and where the need is potentially much greater, right? I mean, you'd agree with that. For myopia may be greatest in Asia and China than it is anywhere else on the planet.
Yeah, I mean, it's worldwide, right? And at least in the United States, we, and when I say we, I mean you as physicians, have options and have tools in your toolbox. That's not always like that worldwide. And why I get excited about it is I look at this condition similar, and they're different. So I don't want anyone to say, oh my gosh, you're comparing it to this condition. But the analogy is I come from CNS, and I dealt also in dementia, right? And what you're always trying to do is you're trying to slow down that disease, right? You're trying to slow down dementia. Here in myopia, you're actually at a different stage of life. You're at the earlier stage of life, right? Kids versus, the older age of life. And you're trying to slow this disease down, right? And myopia is a disease, and we're trying to slow that down. And as that child ages, you're going to bring in device options, right? You're going to bring in, always do behavioral modifications. Like you said, Jay, stay away from the computer, get outside in the sunlight, right? You're always going to do that because this is multifactorial, and you got to slow down this disease. And if you do it, you folks know better than anyone, right? Every diopter you lose is a diopter you never get back, right? And so if you can slow it down and keep that child from losing those diopters of vision, it helps them later in life. And so that's what really excited me most about it, right? Because this is not like symptoms, like I'm helping make sure I blurred vision that I can see different. This is actually helping slow down a disease that can become a real big issue later in life. And I think Sydnexis is on track to do that. Obviously, we're down at the FDA. The FDA has to review the file, respect the process there. But, we did everything the agency asked us for, and we submitted the file. And what I like about it, again, I'm a commercial CEO, right? Commercial CEO is that the eye care professionals are the ones that told us they wanted this product.
That's right.
They told us atropine actually works, or just get me a stable product.
So Perry, you hear about myopia centers, digital therapies, contact lenses throughout the night, and so forth. Do you think those will go away, or those will be part of the armamentarium and then a multimodal approach in taking care of these kids with progressive myopia?
It will clearly be part of it. You're hearing it exactly from me. It doesn't go away. All you're doing with SYD-101, let's assume we get approved, right? SYD-101 now becomes the foundation here because, we believe we could be approved down to as early as age of 3. If you look at the CHMP positive opinion in Europe, they actually gave a recommendation from 3 to 14. So let's assume that the U.S. potentially may follow the same age range. But as you know, what you want to do with myopia, you want to get them young, right, in age and early in that progression. And device options, they all play a role. They're great, but you can't start young in age and early in progression. And so what happens now is SYD-101 becomes that foundation, right? Early in age, that 5-year-old, that 6-year-old, you start giving one drop at night before you go to bed, and you start helping to slow that disease down. As that child ages, 8, 9, 10, you bring in other options that can be additive to continue to slow that down until your myopia stops progressing. So the way I look at it as CEO of the company is that it's just another tool in the toolbox for doctors, eye care professionals to use for their patients. We believe it's a critical tool because myopia, it's all about getting that child young and early in that progression.
I think a lot of people don't really, again, and we'll go back to it in a minute, but, people just don't understand what it means. Like progressive and pathologic myopia, people, I don't think, understand that this is structural abnormalities of the eye that develop over time. People who are progressively myopic have a greater risk for retinal detachment. They have greater risk for developing glaucoma. They have greater risk for not developing normal vision as they get through, amblyopic type potential where you just don't develop normal vision at high levels of myopia. There are a lot of problems. Myopia is a disease. And I think people don't realize that myopia is anything more than glasses, contacts, and maybe getting LASIK to fix it. and have LASIK to fix your myopia, it's not going to fix the structural abnormality of your eye that could lead to significant pathology down the road. And that's kind of the difference here. And I think the messaging, once we start to see that there's an approved treatment for myopia, and hopefully it'll get out into the world the proper way, people understand that this is a disease modifying therapy. This isn't just trying to keep people out of glasses when they get older.
You're fully right, Rob. And you said it exactly the way I look at it, right? And to me, when I was coming over to look at this opportunity, this is where I actually compliment the eye care professionals, right? Across the board, from pediatric ophthalmologists to general ophthalmologists to optometrists, wherever you come in, right? This is where they do what they really love to do and try to help that kid, right? Just convince it. Just try to think this. You on the line, you two, right? Spend time trying to educate a parent, right? That I'm going to use a non-FDA approved product that I'm going to compound to slow this disease down. I would not want to be in your shoes on that conversation with my wife, right? I mean, non-FDA approved product, their kids are the most, we love, we would do anything for our kids. And so I compliment the eye care professionals for saying, hey, listen, this is the way to do it. This is the way to help them later in life, right? And our only option, Rob, like you said, was to go and get a compounding product, because if we don't slow this train that is going very quick, we're going to run later in life consequences, right? And slow this train down. And this is what I love about eye care, right? Overall, right? Is that, you'll do what's best for that patient, right? And you'll buck the system. And so a lot of times like you were saying, worldwide, you can't do that. But in the US, you're able to do that. And I compliment eye care for doing it. And I got to tell you, Jay, you and I talk about it, how many times, all the eye care professionals that know it, but, understand, they don't want to use a compounding
Well,
product.
that's right. Some are on the sidelines because they'll say, just do a contact lens or glasses, and it is what it is, right? You go from a -4 to a -9. It is what it is. And some have taken the leap of faith after counseling the parent. It's still worth the benefit, but the risk is I don't trust which company is compounding, what the formulation, what the stability of the formulation is going to be. So I think the FDA still is something that we all abide to as citizens, actually of the world. Everyone looks at the FDA here and the rigorous guidelines it takes to get an approval. So I agree with you here. I think, quite frankly, if you are successful, this is going to bring more pediatric ophthalmologists, pediatric optometrists, general ophthalmologists, parents, the fault saying, hey, this is trusted, large trial, 800+ patients, an amazing safety trial. I think the FDA made you guys do a safety trial as well, right? We read it on the background here. So that's the sauce for success. Then the question is going to be commercial success. Now, people are used to paying a certain price, say, for example, a compounding, a monthly price, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 bucks, whatever it may be, right? How will you deal with that? These are kids that have no choice, and their parents that may not be able to afford, for example, $200 a month or $300 a month for something that's FDA approved. Is there, and that's your challenge as a CEO on the managed care access for the greater swath of patients. How are you going to face that challenge?
Yeah, I figured Jay would ask me a tough question. That's why I'm going Houston now. So I'm going Houston all the way. Sorry, Rob. So, I'm flipping my game, but
I like to turn you off, so it's okay.
Don't worry. When you ask me the nice question, I'm going back to Duke. Okay, so but I'll flip real fast. But to me, I step back and I would not want to tell my, hopefully, and I'm sure they're going to be listening, my development folks, but it used to be getting a product approved was the toughest thing that you had to do. I would actually say it's the second toughest thing. Getting a product reimbursed today is the toughest thing. I've seen great products get approved and unfortunately can't crack the code of reimbursement. And so as CEO is something near and dear to my heart. I ran the entire global pricing and reimbursement business for Shire, right? I ran it for not just the eye care division, but for rare disease products that were, the price points were so high. You got to make sure you have access to the product. And everyone thinks that access to the product is around a price of a product. It actually has nothing to do with the price. It has a small piece to do. The access, what actually gets access for a product is that you have to have a good value proposition for the product. So the way we look at it here, first and only FDA approved product, the pediatric population is actually a very friendly population with payers. And to be very honest, and my friends in glaucoma and dry eye and other areas will get mad at me, I'm staying far away from the Part D segment. This is a commercial and Medicaid book of business. I ran Zydra. Part D is a brutal business on reimbursement, and you know this, Rob, better than anyone, right? So to me, I do believe, Jay, that we will have access for this product for the patients that need it. And it is a high priority of mine, both on the commercial book of business as well as the Medicaid book of business, to make sure that if the physicians feel that this is the right product for their patients, they have the access to get the product. And so that's why I came on. I've built out already my market access team here in Sydnexis, because you got to start working on that well before you're approved. But to me, that is actually, Jay, the toughest thing today in commercializing products is actually market access. But I feel very comfortable in it.
We look at that from the investment perspective too. I mean, it used to be, the first three check boxes of any diligence process were management. That's one, management. Number two is likelihood of reimbursement, right?
Yep.
Because we've seen products that work and are safe, and unless they do clinical programs, preclinical programs in reimbursable conditions, nobody even wants to come near it. So
That's right.
It's changed the entire way that products get developed. And
Fully agree.
Congratulations for looking at it from the right perspective. Your PDUFA date is in October. Assuming you guys are approved, which we all kind of think you are going to get, what's the earliest we think we get this into the market? People can have access.
Yeah. So our PDUFA date is October 23rd. And again, assuming approval, and the file's under review, but assuming that approval and it did, we would look to be bringing this product to market the first half of next year. We would want to get it out as quickly as possible, but most importantly, when you launch a product, in my opinion, and listen, I grew up in the old days where if you had a PDUFA date, your job was to launch it the very next day. Right? That I grew up in Merck and Novartis, like get all the engines running. But to me, the most important part for this product is to make sure that the physicians have a positive experience with their patients. And it goes back to what we were just talking about, Rob, access, right? One thing for sure, on October 24th, you will not have access to this product, right? October 23rd, if you got approved. October 24th, it doesn't happen. So allow the access to open up, right? So when a salesperson goes and talks to a physician, and a physician decides if it's the right product or right for their patient, and they write it, they have a positive experience for that product. And if that takes you just a little bit longer to do that, do it, right? Because at the end of the day, the last thing I need is on October 24th, and then Jay calling me, yelling at me that, he wrote a prescription for it and got kicked back in the pharmacies. And, it puts a black mark on your product. And so I'm just, to me, that's why I say first half of 2026, we will have access, hopefully in a good place that we can allow that positive experience for our customers.
It's easy to screw up a launch. So
Yeah.
that's
well said. Well said. It's a lot easy, really easy.
Two things offline. He wants to learn more about the dementia product that you're talking about. We just say right now.
I see. Hey, man, I got one of those products approved.
Sign me up to that study right now.
I want to say this and embarrass you a little bit. I'm assuming you're getting paid, right? And what you're doing, but
No,
this is something, Perry, that you probably really want to win for the kids, the world, outside US and inside US. All the things you said. This could be one of your best, most important launches in terms of making a difference globally in the lives of, the average human being who goes through, progressive myopia and all the different bad things that can happen in those patients later in life that we take care of, right?
And you said it well, Jay. I mean, fortunately, and I'm blessed, I've done well in my career, not good enough to get a suit like yours, but I've done, but when I left Shire, I went back into the CNS space because I thought I could make a difference for dementia, right? I thought, I saw that, I'm taking care of parents that are aging, and I see what's happening. And I said, well, if I could make an impact in that area, right? Even if I help one patient, it's one patient more than the day before. And now coming back in eye care, I chose an area that I really do believe that I'm making a difference, right? I'm not the physician. The physicians obviously make the difference on diagnosing and treating, but if I can help in just bringing an innovative product to their toolbox, and if they choose it on just one patient, right, I made it a difference. So that's what brought me back to this space.
Yeah. Well, listen, Perry, I think it's been great speaking with you today.
Yeah, really.
Again, kind of maybe cliched, but you really have, brought a lot of incredible products to the treatment, armamentarium for ophthalmologists. And we all appreciate that. And I think Sydnexis is an important company whose product really has the potential to have an impact on a population of patients. I've always said that I would be so happy to be able to use a magic wand and fix my patients instantly.
That's right.
If you can prevent or slow down the development of progressive myopia, you're going to make my job that much easier down the road, or at least the people who come after me, because a lot of the people that I see, their ocular disease is a direct result of progressive myopia. So
that's right.
It's going to make everybody's lives better down the road. So thank you again. We really appreciate having you on the podcast. Perry Sternberg, CEO of Sydnexis. Thanks for your time. And I think the OIS podcast audience appreciates your time and candor today. So thanks again.
One of my most successful mentees, you listen to what I said over there.
Yeah, I know. Rob, I'm Duke now. Good to see you guys. Thanks for not.
Have a great podcast audience. Looking forward to the next interview.
Bye-bye.